Welcome to the Maverick Mindsets podcast, which was conceived by myself, Rick Lowe, to satisfy my hunger for personal growth. I invite guests onto the show that exhibit all the traits of a true maverick: resilience, courage, success, failure, and purpose. And we get to hear their unique entrepreneurial life journeys and the lessons they've learned. If you want to hear all about managing your mindset and learn how to discover new motivations to improve your physical and mental well-being in the world of life or entrepreneurship and more, there's never been a better time to ignite your own inner maverick by listening to this show. Today on my podcast, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Talan Skeels-Piggins. Talan is a world and European champion, Paralympian, and one of the most pioneering adaptive athletes in the world. Paralysed from the chest down in 2003, he set himself the goal of reaching the Winter Paralympics and achieved it just 7 years later, representing Great Britain in Vancouver. Since then, Talan has gone on to become a double world champion motorcycle racer, the first paraplegic to hold both motorcycle and car race licenses, and a powerful motivational speaker known for redefining what's possible in sport and beyond. It's a real privilege to speak to Talan today. And for those of you who want to understand how to overcome massive obstacles in your life, this guy is a true maverick. And now let's welcome Talan to the show. So it's a real privilege to welcome Talan to the Maverick Mindsets podcast today. Now, I've known Talan probably might be as much as 10 years, Talan, actually.
It is, yeah.
And just great opportunity to get him onto the podcast and talk to Talan about the unique journey he's had. I mean, just listening back to some of the intros on his CV, double world champion, Paralympian, motorcycle, car racing. What else do we have? We've got skiing, we've got clay pigeon shooting, yacht racing, sports personality of the year for Baines, Olympic torch carrier during the 2012 Olympic torch relay. So there's so much in there that we want to get into. And today we talked, Talan, about it's how you've looked at and dealt with adversity, how you view performance, high performance particularly, and the disciplines around it, and kind of impact and perspectives that you see on life and how you've helped others. But I think before we get into the kind of meat on the bones, as it were, could you just give us a sense of your background and your upbringing and how you got to, become as it says, a PE teacher and then into the kind of military as well? It just give the listeners and viewers a bit of a foundation, I guess, to what made you who you are mentally.
Okay, I suppose I've had quite a varied life and experiences. But let's go back to, I suppose, the beginning. Grew up in Cornwall, and I am forever grateful that I grew up there. I was incredibly lucky that my mum and dad were able to get a house in a place called Myla.
Okay.
And it was right on the edge of a tidal estuary. So we had a house, a little single track road, a bit of a lawn, which we used to call the splat, because that was about as big as it was. And then there was the water. And when the tide came in, you could go sailing in it. When the tide was out, you would just wade around in mud.
Okay.
It became a sort of a central focus for me, the sea, and everything I did was related to it. So I learned to swim in the sea. After school, we would go to the beach and mum would do a marking and my brother and I would play on the beach and, be left up to our own devices, which sort of very early on instilled a sense of adventure.
Okay.
As well as maybe a little bit of risk taking, because we used to go and climb up the cliffs and climb up the rocks and jump into pools and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I got into a thing called windsurfing, and that became my real passion. So during each holiday, I would get on my bicycle. I would cycle about a mile and a half down the road, down to the sailing club where I kept my kit, and I would sail and windsurf every day that I could. Even if it was snowing, I would still be out in it. And I just loved being on the water, and I loved the feeling of freedom that windsurfing gave me. It also started to teach me a little bit about resilience, because I was self-taught. The only way that I learned was by reading magazines and trying it out. And often I would get it wrong. And when I started to learn, I learned off our garden. And quite a number of times I would be blown across to the other side of the creek. And that would involve a mile walk back. So I had to walk all the way up to where the bridge was, come all the way back down the other side, because I hadn't learned this thing called self-rescue. Obviously, years after I learned, I became a windsurfing instructor, and the first thing that I taught everybody was how to rescue themselves. At that time, I didn't know. So I would get blown over to the other side, and then I'd have to do this long walk back, and I would, sometimes I'd get back home and it would be dark. But I didn't give up, because I was pursuing something that made me passionate. And I think that was one of the key things that I realized, is that if you are passionate about something, you will keep going back to it, no matter what the difficulties were, what the hardship were, no matter how many times I cut my feet open by walking back through all of the gravel and the mud and the seaweed and the anchors and the chains and everything, I still went back to it. I think that's a really important thing, that for anyone, if you're going to do something, is you've got to do it. You've got to do things that you're passionate about, because then you continue it. Anyway, I grew up in Cornwall. Went to school. I had a great time at school. I really enjoyed it. Then I didn't really cover myself in glory when it came to exams. I went off the boil, as it were, just probably in the upper sixth. I decided that I wanted to become a professional windsurfer, and that my future lied in me going out to Hawaii, becoming a wave sailor, and that was what I thought I wanted to do. And so studying.
Why Hawaii? I mean, that's the other side of the world.
That's right? That's where my hero lived, Robbie Nash.
Okay.
He was my childhood hero. And he still is a hero. He's still out there. He's still windsurfing. He's still doing it. And I love wave sailing. So I got better and better at windsurfing, got into wave sailing, so I could do jumps and I could do somersaults and all sorts of crazy stuff. And I wanted to go out there. I wanted to hit the big waves with where the professionals were, where the action was. And I wanted to become a big wave sailor. And that was my dream.
And a huge leap from rural Cornwall, right?
Yes, but in Cornwall we still have some good waves. If you get St Ives, Gwithian, Red River, Dana Bay, and even Marazion on the south coast, on some good days you get some good waves.
Yeah.
So that was my dream, and I managed to fail my A levels, and I didn't go to where I thought my parents thought I was going to go. I was forecast, 2 A's and a C, and I was going to go to Oxford, and I ended up with 2 D's and a U, and I went nowhere. In fact, what I did do was I went over to the Isles of Scilly, and I worked as a barman in a new hotel on St Martin's Hotel. And then my mum and dad got a bit cross, and they went through clearing. I didn't even care about going off to university. I was saving up money to try and get out to Hawaii. That was still my dream. And they sent me to Portsmouth Polytechnic, and I didn't really want to go, and I wasn't interested, and I didn't study. I don't think I ever found the library in the entire year that I was there. And surprise, surprise, I got kicked out of Portsmouth, which took some going, actually, because at the time Portsmouth Poly took just about anyone. So I wasn't impressing anybody with what I was doing. Apart from myself, I thought I was hilarious. Then I started to live in a caravan, and I was working in a yard, and I was getting paid to race yachts. So again, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm having a fantastic time. my parents once again found out, because I keep forgetting to tell them about these sort of minor mishaps, and they got really annoyed, and I got the royal summons to come back home. And when I arrived back, I got an absolute dressing down, I should say. And my mum then told me that the only thing left for me was to install some discipline, so I was going to join the military. And in fact, she'd already gone to the careers office. She'd got the form, she filled it out, she'd forged my signature and posted it off.
But you obviously had very strong parents to want to guide you in every way.
So they were, they were just hugely disappointed in my attitude towards further education, and that becoming a professional windsurfer wasn't a job. You know, that's not what you're going to do. So then I trundled, I went for this naval interview and I passed it, and I suddenly found myself at Dartmouth on a very dark January evening with a little man with a cap on screaming and shouting at me to get out of the back of some 4-ton truck. And then I spent 6 years in the Navy, and I seemed to do it okay. I became something called a fighter controller. So I would control fighter aircraft in the operations room to carry out the various missions as directed by the command.
Which would have needed focus and understanding,
massively. So they say that you go for an aptitude to become a fighter controller and 10% pass. You then have the aptitude to attend the course, of which they reckon about 10% pass the course. Wow. So it's a really, really hard, stressful thing to do. And somehow I managed to get through it. And then when I left the Navy, I did some traveling. Then I came back to the UK, faffed around for a bit, and then became a PE teacher. Mm-hmm. And then I suddenly realized, out of everything, that this was my dream job, because I love sport and I always have. And when I was at school, I played all the sports there were. I was the captain of the hockey team. I was captain of the sailing team, but I played rugby for the first 15. I played football. I played cricket. I played tennis. I played badminton, squash, you name it. I did it and I loved it. And when I was during the holidays, I was a windsurfing instructor. So I loved teaching. So suddenly I didn't realize there was this thing called PE teachers. And it was sort of a bit of an aha moment when I suddenly realized that I could become a PE teacher. And then I went to university because I wanted to. And, I did really well. The mathematics section of my course, for example, this is the difference between when you do something because you want to versus when you do something when you don't want to. Yeah. So I'm a U at A-level maths. So that's pretty dreadful. I went to university because I wanted to, and we had to do maths and we had to do statistics. I got 100%. Wow. I'm the first person to get 100% in this exam. And I'm like, how can I be? I'm still the same person.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
Because it's something that I want to do, I threw energy and effort into it because just like the windsurfing, it was something that I was passionate about, something that I wanted to do. And it's amazing how much pushback there is from you as an individual without you even knowing it. When you try to do something that you're not really interested in, you never fully involve yourself in it.
Yeah.
And I was amazed. And then I became a PE teacher and I was really excited. And I went off to my first school. Oh my gosh, I thought I was living the dream. I was living in Bath, which is a beautiful city, had an amazing girlfriend. Being a PE teacher, I had a plan to become a head teacher. I was doing my NQT year. Then I was going to go to Africa. So I had a job to go to at the Mombasa Academy. I was going to go and get experience in a completely different culture. And then come back to the UK, become head of a department, become deputy head and then head teacher. And that's what I wanted to do. And oh my word, I was on my way. And then out of nowhere, I was on my motorbike going towards a rugby match and a car came out the side road. It didn't see me. It clipped me. It knocked me off my bike, threw me across the road straight into the path of the oncoming traffic. and life changed in an instant.
Wow. And can you remember the accident, or
I can remember going underneath the front of the car. And so this is a very weird thing to say. It was singly the most incredible experience of my life. And that sounds very odd to say that about something quite catastrophic. And that's because when I went under the front wheels of the car, I could see it happening. I could see the car coming towards me, and I could see that I was going to get run over. And I could see that the car was going to hit me in the head or that area.
Yeah.
My brain started to do a number of very rapid calculations about how much this was going to hurt, how much pain I was going to be in. And what I actually came up with was, well, there's nothing you can do about this, but you are going to die. This is the end of your life.
Because obviously in that split second, it's just, well, you almost, time probably freezes in your mind. Is it going to slow motion or?
So yeah, everything went really slowly. And then when the brain finally came up with this sort of answer that I was going to die, I was sort of taken out of my body. And if you can imagine, basically floating in the middle of space, right? And there's nothing around you, right? If you can imagine being a pinpoint in the middle of space, and you've just got, like, it's a giant ball all around you of nothingness. But onto that nothingness was then posted every single moment of my life. So I could see everywhere, everything, all at the same time, and I could see my life in one instant of time. And by seeing that, I was able to see that I'd been a good person, right? I might have been a bit naughty every now and then, but we all have. But I'd not been a bad person. I had traveled. I had helped people. I had experienced life. And do you know what? It was actually okay. I'd had a sort of good innings.
How old were you then?
I was 32.
Okay.
And so I then went back into my body. And I let out what I thought was my final breath. And I wasn't angry. I wasn't cross. I wasn't frustrated or anything. I was totally at peace. It was all right to die. I was like in a total Zen state of calm and peace with myself, knowing that I'd had a good life. I got smashed underneath the car massively, breaking my back and my neck and ribs, and huge amounts of internal damage as well. But I didn't die. But that one moment has always stayed with me, this amazing experience. And so in one way, when people talk about Judgment Day is coming, well, yes, in one respect, when you die, Judgment Day does happen. However, you are not being judged by others. You will judge yourself. Okay. If you know that your death is coming, I believe that you will have the same experience that I did. You will be able to assess your life, and you will either give yourself a tick or a cross. You will either be totally happy that you gave it a good go, that you were a good person, that you did do all these things, and when you and then you will be at peace.
And I mean, that's very inspiring in many ways, and also deep, I guess. And then you presumably, someone puts you in an ambulance, you end up in hospital.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
Well, then I'm in and out of consciousness, and I don't really know what's going on. And when I'm finally stabilized and I'm hooked up to the life support machine and everything like that, the doctor, I can have a chat with them, and he tells me about what's happened. He tells me that I've been in this traumatic accident. He tells me that I'm now paralyzed from the chest down. I'm never going to walk again, but I only have a 30% chance of survival. And if I do survive, I'm going to be in hospital for about 2 years because of all of the injuries that I've sustained. And then I just feel every bit of hope for the future drain out of me. I just felt like my soul leave me, that there was no reason to continue, that I should have died. And so I was asking them to let me die, switch off the life support machine, let me die, because it would be far more humane.
Well, plus from the fact that you were so active as
Yeah.
as an individual, and almost always pushing boundaries to that point, and still today, to be presented with a fait accompli where, you know, that is it, that's almost, there's nothing we can do apart
Yeah.
from try and keep you alive, and you've got a, I mean, what do you then, just give us a sense of what's the time frame on you, I guess, defrosting your mind and getting into what must have been a positive state to move forward?
Okay, well, there are a number of different time frames for different ways of me moving forward. Immediately was, well, they're not going to switch off the life support machine because we have the Hippocratic Oath and we do no harm in this country. So that wasn't going to happen. So then it was a case of, okay, I'm going to be alive. And I just thought I was going to be miserable, that there was no hope. And I just fell into a very dark pit of despair. I did not know that there was anything that I could do. And I just cried. I cried a lot. I think I cried nonstop. Every time I was awake, I cried. And then about 10 days later, a guy came into hospital for his regular checkup. And they asked him to come and speak to me, and he did. And he told me about his life. So he'd been in a wheelchair for about 5 years. And he said that he was still getting to grips with it. But, you know, whilst there were lots and lots of challenges, there were loads of things that he could do. And he started to say, you know, you drove here today? He goes, I've got a car, you can drive. He goes, I've got a girlfriend. I go traveling. I do different sports. And then he said that he went skiing. And I couldn't believe it. I thought that was the craziest thing in the world. How can you possibly go skiing when you're paralyzed? And he explained about this weird contraption, this sort of fiberglass seat on a metal frame with some sort of suspension underneath it, and then skis, and in your arms you have little miniature crutches, and they've got little baby skis on them. And that by using this specialist equipment, you can go down a mountain. And I was absolutely blown away. Couldn't believe it. We'd skied as a family when I was younger, and I knew that skiing was, I just loved it. I was just so excited. If I hadn't wanted to be a professional windsurfer, I would have wanted to become a ski racer. So it was like a little moment. It was that catalyst. It was a seed, whatever you want to call it, that started to change the way that I was looking at the rest of my life. And it started to take root. And I must admit, I was on quite a lot of morphine, so I did get a bit carried away with myself. And then I just realized that maybe I would learn to ski, and that could give me happiness. And then I thought that I could challenge myself to be, you know, why can't I become a good skier? Why can't I become a ski racer? Let's become that thing. And they went, yeah, there is ski racing. So I was like, right, great. I'm going to learn to ski. I'm going to get in the British team, and I'm going to go to the Paralympics. And so that was 12 days after my accident that became a new goal. Now that gave me a focus, but it still didn't mean that I'd accepted myself.
Yeah.
So it gave me hope, and it gave me light at the end of the tunnel. And so that was a start. And, you know, and it gave me positivity. And that was a massive thing in hospital. And I think for anybody having any challenge, you need something positive that you can hold on to, so it becomes your mental anchor. And I had skiing, and it stopped me falling further into the pit of despair.
Yeah.
And it gave me a focus point. It gave me something to aim for, and it gave me something that I can put my energies into. You know, I didn't have much energy at the time, but it prevented me from disappearing into a pit that I was never going to come out of.
Mm.
And unfortunately, there are lots of people that don't get the hope, that don't get the light at the end of the tunnel. They don't have that mental anchor, and they do fall into that pit, and they are there for a very, very, very long time.
And also, I mean, like in terms of that profound journey you were on, there's lots of people who don't have, let's say, that physical hardship who do fall into, there's so much about mental health now,
Yeah.
and the anxiety that society is driving into people. But your story's just so fascinating because you literally hit a full stop, a brick wall almost.
Yeah.
And you had to then find that seed of hope and start to build on it. And I guess the question is that kind of situation, which on the one hand is out of your control, you did manage to get control back into your life based on finding that anchor, in your case, the skiing to focus on. But from that point, you must have had to relearn life again, wouldn't you? So you come out of hospital, you've then got to learn to live as a paraplegic.
Yeah.
And that must have been incredibly frustrating. But on the one hand, everything's new to learn.
It is. And, with the thing about the control, I was in hospital and nothing was in my control.
Mm.
I didn't control what time I got up. I didn't control, my bladder or my bowels. That was beyond my control. I didn't control when I was fed. I couldn't control anything.
Mm.
Nothing was in my control. And I realized that even the simplest thing in life, like being able to feed myself, was beyond my control. Someone had to do that for me because I had to lie flat on my back and I wasn't allowed to move. So people had to feed me. People had to give me water. At one point, I couldn't even breathe by myself. That was being done by something else.
Mm.
And I knew that this change in my life was massively significant. It was a huge thing for me to try and deal with. And I realized the only thing that I could control was how I was going to approach the next minute, then the next hour, then the next day, then the next week. And that control was how I interpreted myself. How was I going to react? What was I going to choose to do? Was I going to choose to be the victim? And that was the easiest thing to do. I'm going to be a victim. I'm going to be miserable.
Yeah.
I realized that every time, if I chose that route, I would still be paralyzed. Mm. I would still have all these things beyond my control. I could choose to think in a more positive way. I could choose to respond in a way that would make me feel less miserable. So I then realized that basically the only thing that I can control is how I respond to the situation mentally. Everything else beyond your control. And I think that is, within limits, pretty well much true for everybody. There is so much in your life that is beyond your control. And, we think we control many things. When I was in the Navy, we were taught to control as many different things as possible, to remain in command and control. And you can't. The only thing that you can control is how you either react / respond to a situation. And sometimes you can't even react to how you respond. Because you can't even react. Hang on, let me rephrase that. You can't control your reactions because often reactions are an involuntary sort of fight, flight, freeze response.
Yeah, emotion.
It's emotional, whereas response is when you actually logically think about it and you make a concerted decision about how you are then going to respond. So there's reaction and response. And
Mm.
and it's not just me that's comes up with that idea. I've just been reading Viktor Frankl's book. And in that, he has written that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is your or our power to choose a response. And I think that is it. That is the only, that space is where you have control.
Interesting. And it can never be taken away from you in a sense, because you've got providing you've got your mental faculties, which, fortunately and clearly, you maintained. And then in terms of kind of adversities, we hear a lot about that today in the world. Where would you see, how do you challenge adversity? And we talked about control there, but what else in the world of adversity, skill wise, do we need to, how do we address it?
Adversity for me is how you position it to yourself. Adversity are challenges. So how do you see challenges in your life? And I decided to take the route that all challenges are an opportunity for me. They're an opportunity for me to see if I can become a better human being.
Okay.
Having had that experience of dying and seeing my life and seeing how I had reacted to situations in my life, and taking on the challenges and not giving up had given me that ability to say, you know what, it's okay for you to die. You don't have to be afraid. And it made me realize that is a good way to be. And if I'm going to die at some point, but I want to still be in that position where I'm at peace, and I've realized that I didn't run away. I didn't fall apart. Well, I think we'll still do, resist, and we do still, but that every challenge that came to me, I see as an opportunity rather than as something to give it a go, and not to be afraid of failure. And I think that's where people often come unstuck, is when they see adversity and they see a challenge, and they think that if they try the challenge and they fail, that's the worst that could possibly happen. But how do you know until you've actually tried? You will always fail if you never try, but you may not always fail if you actually try. And I've tried lots of different challenges, of which I've managed to succeed in some, and I have utterly failed in others. And I've just learned different ways, maybe, of doing a certain challenge until I found a way that did work for me. And it's not always the first way or the second way or the third way. It might be the 1,000th way.
Because they say you fail your way forward, don't you, in a way? Because, and each failure, you're closer to success in many ways. It's how you frame it in your mind. And I mean, just looking through your sporting achievements, as a paraplegic, I mean, you must have had incredible discipline to crack those sporting goals and set yourself up. And did you have to learn that? Did you already have it? What's the daily modus operandi or disciplines in going forward and achieving that level of greatness?
Well, I think it probably was there to begin with. And so I think we all have resilience inside us. And sometimes as we get older, we forget about our resilience. And if you imagine, so for everybody that can walk, Okay. I ask you the question of who taught you how to walk?
Well, it's interesting.
No one taught you.
You've got to learn yourself. You fail your way to trying to learn. Fall over, get up, fall over, get up.
Exactly. You were supported. You were being encouraged by these two big people that were making noises that you probably didn't really understand. And yeah, you just kept on going. But at no point did you ever stop trying to learn to walk. No matter how many times you stood up and fell over or took a step and fell over, you did it. The trouble is, once we start to learn to walk, we start to progress. We then go to school, and then teacher says, sit there, don't move. And then suddenly we get restrictions placed upon us, because up to that point, we're always encouraged to go and do stuff and move forwards. And then suddenly you're being regimented. You are being told to sit, and you're going to learn this. This is all being dictated to you rather than you finding out. And little by little, we forget about our internal resilience, and for some people they completely forget it's there. And the experiences that we have in life, often in order to maybe prevent the same experience from impacting us, we put a layer of protection around us, and another layer, and another layer. And so you basically have to take time, and this is where going to hospital and getting paralyzed was really beneficial for me, because I had 16 and a half weeks of lying in bed, not moving, not going anywhere, not able to do anything. In those days, we weren't allowed a computer, we weren't allowed phones because they would interfere with the electronics. And so I just had a white ceiling to stare at. And so I got really, really bored. And then I started to think and reflect inwardly. And I started to peel away the various layers that I had put around me and discard those that, that doesn't really matter anymore. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. And then I found this sort of power, this resilience right in the very core of our being, this resilience that we're born with. And you have it, I have it, everybody has it. It's just about peeling away the layers and finding it, and then trusting in it and believing in this little person inside that will help you to always take the next step forward. And when you do that and you trust in yourself, then you suddenly see the challenges in a different light. You see them as opportunities because you've got this resilience. It's going to help you to take a step forward. And sometimes you're going to fall over, but hey, that doesn't matter, because if you reflect back to learning to walk, well, I did that before and I got up but I managed it. And it's just remembering that it is there. And I've completely off topic and forgotten what we were talking about.
Well, we were talking about that very thing in terms of resilience and how you kind of take that discipline forward. And it starts with your mind. And I mean, let me ask you this. Do you think you're a better person because of your accident?
Yes. And I will also say this, as going back to another question you were saying about how long did it take me to accept and everything. So for 13 years, I would always answer the question. People would say to me, do you want your legs back? And for 13 years after my accident, I would say, yes, I would swap everything that I have done to have my legs back. And that included going to the Paralympics. That included becoming European champion, included becoming world champion. So I would have swapped everything to have my legs back. And then in 2016, I had another really bad accident. I spent a lot of time in bed again, and I had a lot of time for personal reflection again. And then I tried to ask myself, what is my existence on this planet all about? What's my meaning? And I realized that my life has meaning by the number of people that I have been able to help. And I sort of thought about this, and I realized that because I go and give talks, and because I speak to people, and sometimes even what I do helps other people, I have had a greater impact on a greater number of people now being paralyzed than I ever would have done had I become a head teacher. So my life has greater meaning. And at that moment, I wouldn't change what's happened to me.
That's very profound. And
that moment, became a moment when I knew that I truly accepted myself as a wheelchair user. I truly accepted myself as a paraplegic, and I wouldn't swap what's happened to me. So
that's incredible.
my life has changed now.
And with that mindset you've had to develop, especially going forward after the accident, to become a Paralympic, how do you? There's big transferable skills, if you like, between sport and business. And what do you see as those relating to business and leadership?
The key thing for me about progression is you've got to be patient with it. And also you have to focus on the processes. There is no point in fixating on the outcome, because if you just look at an outcome, it's not going to magically happen. You have to think about the processes. As an elite athlete, you have to think about what are the processes that I need to do in order to become the best that I can possibly be. So you have to look at all the different attributes that make up an elite performer within your discipline. You then have to make sure that you become the best that you can be for every single one of those attributes. And that involves processes, not an outcome. If you get all the processes right, the outcome is going to naturally happen. Now, whatever that outcome is, you have no control over, because there's, again, not much that you can control. So, for example, I gave my very, very best performance at the 2010 Winter Paralympics in the Super G race. This was a race that I wanted to win. And I gave my best. And I came 25th. Now, initially, I was devastated. I was humiliated. But then, on reflection and talking through, because I think it's also important that we talk to people, and I talked to a sports psychologist, that I gave my best. Therefore, I could not have gone any faster. Well, I'm proud of what I've done. And now I can sit here and say, I'm really proud of coming 25th because I absolutely gave my best. Right. The very next race that I took part in after the Paralympics was the opening race of the next season. So this particular Super G race, the conditions were different. Again, and that's a factor beyond my control. Again, I gave my best. And when I went across the finish line that time, didn't even look at the leaderboard because I knew I could not have done any better. I focused on the processes. I gave it my all. I was going to be pleased wherever that put me. It turned out I got the gold medal. I beat everybody by about 2 seconds. So it's amazing when you focus on the process and you give your best, the results could be completely different because of an external factor. You can be proud of that outcome if you know that you've given your best and you focus on the processes. So if I had just looked at the outcome, then, I wouldn't have focused on the process. So that's really important within business, that you identify what are the attributes that you need to do in order to give you or your team's best performance. Focus on those. Whatever the outcome is, you've got to be pleased with it because you and or your team could not have done any better. And that's where the rewards need to come from, and where the recognition needs to come from, is that you guys, everybody in the team and yourself, performed to the best of your ability.
Exactly. Yes, that's interesting. And what do you think, in general, what separates people who say that they want to change and achieve something and those that actually, so the ones that don't get there and the ones that actually follow through?
I would say the ones that get there are the ones that aren't afraid of failing. Because it's very easy to list a load of excuses, but the ultimate reason is, I don't want to do it because I don't want to fail. It's like everyone that says, I'd love to write a book, but I haven't got time. Rubbish. Yeah. Everybody has time to write a book. Yeah. But what you're worried about is if you write it and it's rubbish and no one likes it, you think you failed. I finally wrote a children's book And I realized that I haven't done it for people to mark me out of 10. I've done it because I wanted to do it, and I wanted to do it for children. Turns out people actually do like it, which is a bit of a bonus. But I didn't do it to make money. I didn't do it to get a number one book. I did it to help kids.
And do you think that if you look at where society is today, especially for younger people, with the advent of social media, and I was reading this week at all the magic of AI can produce it. So if you're a big influencer in America, you can superimpose a picture of yourself at Coachella next to a major music star, and people believe that you were there, and actually you were in an Airbnb down the road blogging about it or whatever. So have we got to a stage where people don't want the effort and hard work, which gives them the satisfaction when they get to the success? Is that, have we got something wrong in society that is leading people, that drives obviously at the end anxiety and self-remorse and all of those things, because people assume they can have it instantly?
I think you're correct, and I definitely agree with you that you get the most amount of gratification from achieving something when it was really difficult and it was hard work, and you then know internally that you did the best of your ability, and you're proud of what you've done. If it's achieved through deception, then at some point you will get imposter syndrome, and that will gnaw away at you. And I've seen people talk about imposter syndrome and how difficult it is for them, only for them to perpetuate it by doing things on social media, which is exactly what they just said they're worried about. It's like, well, why are you? Of course, you've got imposter syndrome because you're just doing those certain things, like you said, by creating an artificial image of what you would think other people need to see of you versus what you actually are. If you are true to yourself, then you will have a set of behaviors that you will be proud of. And this is another thing that as elite athletes we do, which also benefits people in the in all walks of life, which is to do a values-led task. And that's basically, you get a big sheet of paper and you write down as many values that are important to you as possible. And you can come up with a lot, 40 or 50 different values that you really think are important to you as a human being. You basically start to go through those and you highlight the top 10, and then you basically leave it for a few days, come back to it, then choose three values, and then you've got to write them down on a piece of paper and stick them on a wall in front of you, so you can see the three values that are most important to you. And they change. So you do this exercise every 6 months. And so every decision, every difficult challenge that you're faced with, every response that you're required to do, if they align with your values, then you will always be making the right choice. And as I said, so they do change. So my values for when I was an elite performer have changed now, because now I'm a mentor. So my values are about compassion, empathy, and honesty. Because my focus is on other people. When I was an athlete, my focus was on me. I was very selfish. It was all about, what am I going to do to be a better person, better performer? Whereas now I'm thinking, how do I act, and how do I behave, and what values should I extol that will help other people? And I think people's values change, especially when they have children or they have certain things that happen in their lives, as they progress. And it changes. So that's why you need to go back and revisit it and do it every 6 months. But that will help a lot of people to make decisions.
Yeah.
And then not think that they are imposters or they're not true to themselves. Because if you don't know what your values are and you don't know what you stand for, You're always going to second guess yourself and
Yeah.
doubt yourself, and then you worry, and then anxiety creeps in, and then lots of other things happen.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I've read a lot historically about the law of attraction. And if you look at anyone who's right at the top of their game, and they don't have to be famous particularly, and it can be in any discipline, but it's really about them being in that zone where they're comfortable with what they're doing and why. They've got the why. They've got the values locked in that agrees with decisions they make based on their chosen values. And as a result, they attract the right things towards them that reinforce what they're giving out almost. And it's an interesting mental concept. And I think nowadays we see so, one of the biggest challenges I think we face as a civilization is the amount of choices we have. We can, 50 years ago, you probably went on holiday to the same place every year for 2 weeks. Now you can go anywhere in the world, particularly you can stay in any hotel, you can do any number of disciplines. That's just holidays. Then if you look at what type of food you want, if you go into Tesco, excuse me, you've got so many different types of foods, right?
Paralysis of choice.
Well, it's the call. Someone was saying to me, it works with me. It's the paradigm of choice, isn't it? It's paradox and choice paradox, where you actually don't do anything because you've got too many choices.
Yeah.
And if you look at Steve Jobs from Apple, he always wore I think it was a jeans and a black t-shirt and trainers because it's one less decision he had to make as what to wear.
Yeah. It can be something as simple as like a uniform. For example, I'm a big fan of school uniform because it takes away people's worry about what am I going to wear that is going to look nice, and I can't wear the same thing because then people say I've only got one set of clothes. It's like if school has a uniform, takes away that worry.
Yeah.
And some people say, wow, you're brainwashing people into wearing the same stuff. It's like, you know what, there is so much more to be worried about than what, the clothes that you're wearing. And if you've got that, it just reduces that stress and anxiety for people prior to them going to wherever it is.
Yep. And you can transpose that onto many areas of your life, can't you? And I suppose it's interesting you talking there, Talan, about values, because values should really steer you to make those decisions. Really, what values are is what's important to me. If it's honesty, then let's be an honest person or hang around with honest people. If it's staying healthy, what am I going to do to stay healthy and move towards things that are healthy as opposed to unhealthy? I'm just aware of the time because I know we're ticking on, and listening to you, we could talk forever because you've got so much in there to unpick. But in terms of you looking back on your achievements, what do you think is the most important achievement you've made?
As a person, the most important achievement was to accept myself as a wheelchair user, because then I stopped worrying about me being in a chair, and I became a far calmer person. Now I journaled from basically when I could write. I've kept a journal, and if I go back and I reflect upon what I have written, I can see just how angry I was throughout in my life until I accepted myself. And I'm proud about being paralyzed, and I wouldn't change it. And then suddenly, oh my word, I've become far calmer, far more relaxed. So that's a personal thing. As far as what I have achieved, then I think the greatest thing is I set up a charity to teach disabled people how to ride motorbikes. And that's called the Bike Experience. Now, the charity is not there to teach people to become motorcyclists / motorcycle racers. What it is to show someone who has a disability that one of the things that they probably think is impossible is actually possible. That experience is a catalyst for them for the rest of their life. So then they can say, right, I want to go to town. Oh no, I can't go to town. And they go, well, hang on, I just rode a motorbike. if I can ride a motorbike, I can definitely go to town. I can get on the bus and I can go into town. I can go do my shopping, or I could get on a plane and I could go on holiday, or I could get in a car and I could drive, or I could. And it's what people have done since they have come to the charity, and also the impact it has on those people around them. And I got a letter from a lady whose husband came to the bike experience, and she was just overwhelmed because for 17 years he'd done nothing. He'd had been miserable, and he the world came to the bike experience, realised he could ride a motorbike. They'd been on holiday 3 times. He's like a completely different person.
Wow.
The charity not only changes the individual, it changes everybody associated with that individual. It gives them that hope. It gives them that understanding
of what possibility is.
Yeah, and that I guess singly is the most is a thing that I'm most proud of. Not just for those that come to ride, but also because we help people who are able-bodied, who are the volunteers that help the launch and catch of the disabled riders. And a lot of people come that have depression, that have lots of other issues going on in their own life. And then they see that on that day, they have helped to change someone's life. That is an incredible feeling to take away with you, that you know on that day you took part in something that changed a person's life. And honestly, how many times can you say that in your day-to-day life, that you know that your actions changed a person's life for the better? It's incredible. So for both the riders and for the volunteers that come, you know, it's a truly amazing thing. And I'm so glad that I took the chance for it to fail, because it was going ahead. This is all the way back in 2011. And then the person that was going to support the charity to begin with pulled out. There was no money. So I had to dig into any of the savings that I had and pay for it. And it could have just completely fallen flat on its face. But it did. It's still great. I mean, we're still raising money, but that's, you know, there are many charities that struggle to
especially in today's, you know, society with the
climate. Really, but you know, we've stuck at it. We're there.
Well done.
Still going.
And let me ask you this final question: what's the next 5-10 years for you? Then, what are you focusing on next?
Now I'm focusing on helping other people, and my main focus is being a mentor for children, and these are, at the moment, I'm working for something called the Minerva Virtual Academy, which is an online school. And the type of kids that go there are either athletes, because they're busy training and competing, and so therefore a normal bricks and mortar school is not suitable, or there are children that have anxiety, ADHD, and other specialist requirements and needs that, again, a bricks and mortar school are not appropriate for them. And helping the athletes to become better athletes, and helping the children that have come with basically SEND to develop their own self-confidence and their self-belief. And so that's where I see myself. And I just want to do more of that and try and help more people.
No, it's very profound. I appreciate that. And obviously we'll put all that in the show notes so people can dig in and see how they can make contact there. Talan, it's been great today. I mean, it's been a really enjoying, inspiring, honest conversation, although you've done most of the talking, which you should do because you've got so much to say. Just some of the takeaways for me. I mean, I love the piece about passion. You know, you need that that's the only way you can find a way through. If you haven't got the passion to start with, how are you going to get to the end point? You know, your whole cataloguing of what happened to you in that self-realization, and you describing your whole life-changing experience, I think was really valuable, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And things like finding the positivity, you know, finding the anchor to focus on, and we talked about control. We could talk forever on that, but I really loved about how you chose to make a decision on how to look at your future and how to interpret that. I mean, that was like the light bulb moment, I guess, for you. Challenges or opportunities. I mean, how many times do we hear that, but do we really dig deep and understand it and move forward with it? Because every day you've got challenges every day, but that's called life, isn't it? If you didn't have challenges, pretty much pointless living, because you know, and you grow through those challenges. And then the piece around values, that exercise you do, I think is very profound, because it's almost like you guiding light. You know, it keeps you on you personally on the straight and narrow on what's right for you. And obviously different people have different values, and we may not agree with other people's values, but that's their own personal journey. But unless you've got yours intact, you will veer off left and right. It's a huge thing. And you know, big credit to you for the charity bike experience and what you're doing. And you know, I saw your LinkedIn post when you were, on your last speaking engagement, and I thought the piece around resilience on how to find it inside of yourself was really valuable. And I think, look, I've learned a lot today, and it's a shame we didn't get to this earlier during the podcast, but it was definitely worth waiting for. I really thank you sincerely, and if I think about the attributes of a maverick, you are a true maverick. So thank you very much.
Thank you for allowing me to come along.